I probably could have done all 28 episodes because the anime followed the manga so well, what can I even say? They added action. See you in the next video! Okay, there's a bit more than that, but we're gonna be a bit super specific with details since they are pretty damn similar. It's really the anime that adds more details more often than not that are the main differences, like it extended the intro conversation and showed more festivities. Not that it shows everything though, it made some, say, sensible changes. Kinda messed up to have Himmel and Aizen in a guillotine. I'm also unsure about this look. I think Frieren looks more shocked in the manga that he's old. This though, is where the anime shines a lot. Action. They turned one panel into an entire mini fight. We'll be seeing more of that later. While not as shiny, I still do love the additional in-depth magic talk and additional random scenes that show Frieren. It really adds to the emotion. It's the little things like the tracking squirrel spell that the anime adds that really round things off well that I just never considered. But even what it doesn't add to, it does so well. Each time skip in the manga has a bunch of singular panels for the passage of time, and the anime really does show every single panel, which is really cool to see. There are some differences with facial expressions too. Not sure what to make of this one, it's definitely different, but I'm not quite sure what to read from it. It's not as distinct as manga Frieren smiling at Hyder's grave versus anime Frieren being rather stoic. I guess one last thing to point out for this episode is that in the manga, we do actually see Hyder go through Frieren's decryption. At least he pretended to give a damn about the time he made her waste. The anime made Frieren herself look slightly more confident too. She apparently bought one useful item in the anime, whereas the manga, she really did just waste money. Also, we had the classic Fernpout appear here for the first time in the anime, which wasn't in the manga. There's times where it's the other way around though, so we get equal shares of Fernpout. Then, when Frieren is talking about heights, the height difference is way more clear in the manga. Not sure why that's different, but it is. Now we're back to improvements from the manga courtesy of the anime. This is actually pretty neat. The anime added a drawing of the defensive magic on the ground, which I love as a detail. I also like the realistic way the magic blast is split, unlike the manga, because it does feel like that would naturally happen, but it's magic, I could be wrong. I also want to throw it in there that manga Frieren actually did hit Fern with her magic. And naturally, with more money, you can upgrade more things. You know, get nicer looks, maybe better materials, and I gotta say, that bridge upgrade. Legendary. But before I lose y'all to the bridge, behold, Fernpout. We do get some interesting side-by-sides here, starting with Frieren in the manga giving the fake grimoire a look that makes me very jealous of that book, to how they handled the wood from cleanup duty. The anime, they just burned it all, which I guess is how Japan actually handles some of their trash. But in the manga, they were a bit more economical. They would bring in carts full of usable wood manually back into town and either sell it or give it to the city. I guess fire does look prettier though. The other comparison I got is Flame's ruins. The tree is very different. In the manga, the ruins are very visible, making them probably easier to find. We also get more montage where the anime even adds an extra of Aizen running on water, which is a crazy ability. I think now's a good time to point out that the anime does focus on flashbacks more by virtue of being an anime. It forces us to linger on some scenes or images longer and also takes up our entire vision, even if in the manga the image was half a panel. It really stresses the impact or importance of such scenes, which definitely contributes to the popularity of the series. And now we have Stark and the Dragon, including the anime exclusive Frieren's Food in Ultra HD. In Stark's backstory, we have that Aizen punched him, and it turns out anime Aizen hit him a lot harder, sent him flying way out of the house. Given their physical capabilities and durability though, I wouldn't say it's particularly crazy. What is particularly crazy was how clean that dragon fight was. The manga fight is basically claw attack, whack claw, jump up, slam dragon. The anime took that and then added fire, flying, and flourish. And can you believe the anime skipped a Fernpout moment? That makes us even with the anime now. I do kind of wish they added Frieren's crying face from the manga though. It's kind of funny. Now that we're in the north, we get to really worry about the demons with everyone's favorite decapitee, Aura and company. Let's just jump right into that. Anime Graf did ever so slightly better in his fight against Lugnir, who in turn provoked Graf by talking about his son's sword. The anime also made getting to the manor a lot harder on Stark, Fern, and the animators. They crossed some water and Stark got all wet and just stayed wet for a hot second, which was a pretty neat addition. You know who else also did slightly better against Lugner though? Stark. Anime Stark managed to dodge an attack before getting got. And I really gotta say, the anime title drop hit so good. Not that it was bad in the manga, but damn, you know? Oh, and before we move on, the anime did add an extra scene with Flamme casting a berry over a sapling. So now we have our confrontation between Frieren the Slayer and our soon-to-be Headless Horseman. One tiny detail here, I guess, is that manga aura scales have some kind of magic around them. This fight did seem a tiny bit closer. Either that, or Frieren can gauge her distances incredibly well because that is quite a close shave manga Frieren did not have. But we'll get back to them. The two main fights in this episode were rather spiced up. Between Liney and Stark, anime Liney seemed to like fancy spinning and showing off more. She brought out some different weapons that we manga readers never saw, and we got to see a bit more to their exchange. On Fern's side, the fighting just feels so much more dynamic than in the manga. The manga version, it really was a standoff of spells, not terribly dissimilar to Harry Potter. The anime added so much movement and really just made it a spectacle, but naturally, it all ended the same. And now we return to Frieren and very headless Nick. I could sum this up and just say the mana signatures were bigger in the anime, but I do want to stress how well the anime handles everything from the source material. The build up to the payoff are just exceptional here with the music and imagery from the manga. I'm tempted to say it works better than the manga because when reading you can kind of see the other panels. There's only so much full page art you can do, and you move on fairly quickly from them. But in the anime, everything comes off all the stronger as you get intense focus on each panel individually for a very intentional duration. Anywho, bye Aura! Before we get to Kraft, we do have a couple things. The anime actually added a bit to the montage this time too, like having Graf look at his son's sword. Very emotional. The anime also had a much clearer shot of Frieren's holy symbol, which must have been the hardest 5 pixels to discern. I know they probably got it from the artist, but it's still funny to think about. Funny like how anime Stark had a dream about the jumbo berry dessert, and in comes Kraft. Pretty much everything in that shack seemed way more uncomfortable in the manga. Like they slept on hardwood floors without a pillow or mattress, and they had to do multiple runs to get Kraft's stuff in weather that looked much worse. I suppose anime Stark had it harder though, because he had to do push-ups with a box and Kraft opposed to the manga's just Kraft. And we actually get to see the goddess, or at least her depiction in the manga. We also get cute extra goodbyes to Kraft in the anime. But this episode is where we have the craziest change. The bridge. No, I'm kidding. So I could be wrong about this. Womp womp, I was wrong. Where I thought there was a missing line, things were rearranged, which might still be a first, but I want to make my point regardless. As far as I can tell, every single line from the manga was in the anime, including those little out-of-bubble side comments they often have. That is insane! What I thought was missed was a completely inconsequential line, and they still kept it in anyways, which feels like an amazing tribute to the source material. Granted, we're given a lot of extra scenes too, which we've seen before, but here's another, deciding who carries Frieren. I'm actually a bit surprised here. The anime left out a tiny little bit it showed of Himmel saving the merchant. Feels like something that would have naturally fit the visual sequence. We also have another first here. Frieren took a big whiff of Fern, which was something actually at the end of the chapter as a joke. There have been a few end of chapter jokes, but this is the first time they actually put it in the anime. And can we talk about how closely the little girl is standing to Frieren? No? Okay. What about the rocks the sword is stuck in? Manga had a much more Legend of Zelda Master Sword pedestal vibe to it, which, personally, I like a bit more. Anime Frieren also seemed pretty surprised after Himmel couldn't pull out the sword in his fake hero take. And even though we were all waiting for Stark to give it a pull, it's still pretty interesting that he had flashbacks when looking at the sword. That was also added in. Foreshadowing. And here we have probably the most meme scene, which has Frieren being 90% more smug than the manga. Also grabbing the ring, which was an interesting and early appearance of the ring. We're nearing the home stretch with the introduction of Zane, who fortunately saved Stark. Stark, on the manga hand, got some vague revenge on the snake too, cause Frieren curb stomped it. Not so fortunately, the manga version of our party had to actually pay to get their stuff back, though it was cheap. Fern, being understandably angry in the manga, just chucks Zane's jacket onto the ground, which is decidedly funnier. Just like how the manga really emphasized the size difference between Zane and Frieren. And while not relevant in the slightest, I do like that in the anime, Stark catches a fish. It adds a bit more liveliness. And for those wondering about Flamme teaching Frieren the seduction techniques, there is a tiny little joke at the end of this chapter where Flamme just thought it was cute. Fair enough. And not to sound like a broken record, we have more additions from the anime, taking form as an entire intro with the flashback, and also later picking out a bracelet for Fern. All the while, Fern continues to be an absolute savage in the manga, not even apologizing for kicking Zane. Finally, the ring that we saw before. The anime focuses more heavily on the ring. Not only its early appearance, but when they're falling, the anime focused on the ring leaving Frieren's hand, which the manga didn't do. There's also when she gets it back, she holds it close to her in the anime, which is a much more telling body language. And this may just be me, but when she gets the ring for the first time, our poor boy Himmel looks way more pained in the manga. Gonna pour one out for our lad. So that's all I got for now. If I had anything else to say, I suppose that it's that the manga has some incredible art and images at the start of some chapters, and they're not particularly relevant to the story, nor do they really fit in smoothly, so the anime can't put them in. But I kind of wish there was a way, because they just look that good. Another thing is that the anime characters seem more expressive overall compared to the manga. This could just be me though. Anyways, if you want a part 2, be sure to comment, like, sub, you know the drill. I'll catch you next time.